Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of My First Season. I never had the pleasure of working with my next guest, but I did hear his name quite often mentioned throughout my Club Med career. He had quite the Club Med upbringing in a way before he ever set foot in a village. He was born in New York, grew up in the UK till he was 18 years old, has Swedish nationality, and has been living in Mallorca now for the last 20 years. He went to London, England for Christmas in 1989 and was walking by the Club Med office in the freezing rain when he saw a picture in the window of the beautiful beach scene with a scuba diver, and he walked right in and asked if there were any openings. There were openings, and the rest is history. His first season was in Club Med Turks and Caicos in 1989 as a scuba geo. He had his first dive when he was 10 years old and became a scuba instructor at 18 years old. His rather long, amazing name is Nick Stahl von Holstein, but you probably know him better by another name. Everyone, please help me give a warm My First Season welcome to the one and only Winnie. Hey, Winnie, how are you this morning, sir?
Excellent, Greg. Great to be here and great to have a chat about good old times.
Well, I should say it's morning for me, but probably afternoon for you because you are in the beautiful country of Spain, right?
That's correct. Yeah, we're just cracking the afternoon here.
I'm going to try and not feel bad for you because you're in Mallorca and I'm in Montreal, but that's what it is, right? You seem to have it all figured out. I when I left Club Med, I went, you know what? I want to see snow again. And you were like, nah, I'm good, Greg. I'm going to go to Mallorca. Okay.
So yeah, absolutely. I'm a sunbird all the way.
So yeah, as I mentioned, I've been hearing your name, 10 years in Club Med. I always heard the name Winnie, and I'm sure it was John Paul Morales that was telling me about you because I did, like 2.5 years with John Paul. So it's nice to finally meet the one and only Winnie. And well, yeah, if you can take me back in time a bit, I do want to talk about your, where you went to school and all that. But I guess would you call that trip to London, England, where you saw the Club Med office very fortuitous? I mean, did you ever think was that the first time you saw a Club Med?
I had to be honest, yeah. I mean, I grew up in the UK and I came back from having left UK at 18. I went to university in the US in Rhode Island and I studied marine biology. And then I drove across the States after I graduated and ended up in San Francisco. And then I jumped on a catamaran and sailed to Hawaii, spent a season in Hawaii doing some diving instructing, and then came back to the UK for a Christmas visit. And my parents lived in Knightsbridge in Kensington area, if you know London. And that's where the Club Med office was in London. So it was a cold and wintry day, beautiful, rainy, dark skies and freezing weather in typical English weather. And yes, as you said, I came across this beautiful beach scene at the Club Med office. And I walked in and I thought there was a scuba diver mannequin in the window. And I thought, and I'd never heard of Club Med before. I had no idea, but it just looked so welcoming and beautiful. So I thought, okay, let's see whether these guys have got any jobs. So I walked in and lo and behold, there was a recruitment office there as well, above the sort of the tourist booking office where you wanted to book holidays. So they gave me an application. I filled it out. They said, come back tomorrow, do an interview, which is all in French, which was quite interesting because my French was a bit rusty. But being a sort of European recruiter geo, French was pretty important in those days. So I stumbled through the interview, and this was sort of early January, just after Christmas. So it was, mid-season for most Club Med villages. And they said to me, well, your qualifications look great. Think we can give you a job, but it'll probably be 3 or 4 months before we can place you. So I thought, oh, well, okay. So I walked away. And then that afternoon, the phone rang and they said, we've got an opening and we need a scuba geo urgently. Are you able to go in 2 days' time? And I said, well, yeah, where to? And they said, Turks and Caicos. And yeah, Turks. I thought, I had no idea. I thought they were talking about Turkey. And I thought, well, what's in Turkey? So I got the old Club Med magazine out and I found Turks and I discovered that was actually in the Caribbean. I thought, well, this is getting better and better. So lo and behold, within, I think it was 36 hours of walking into the office, I was on a flight to Miami and then to Turks, and arriving mid-season, I think some geo had, I don't know, had been fired or let go or whatever. Anyway, an opening came along. Lo and behold, all of a sudden, I found myself flying over the Bahamas and arriving at Turks and Caicos.
Okay, let's
So
stop the
that's
story.
that's
No,
how it started.
okay, let's stop the story before you land because I got a few questions to ask you. Okay, I'm going to back you up a bit. It was almost as if you were designed to be a geo because you graduated university. Okay, you studied marine biology. So what are the odds that you became you got certified in scuba so young? You became an instructor at a young age. You graduate marine biology. So did you ever think you were going to be plunked into the ocean with a wild dolphin? And did you use this university degree in marine biology with JoJo at all? Like, did you ever think this was going to
Um,
happen?
well, I always hoped to end up in the ocean with some dolphins and beautiful marine life, and yeah, JoJo was one of them. I studied marine biology because my favorite subject was biology, and my biggest passion was scuba diving. So that just made a natural sense to put the two together. I didn't study with a career in mind, just with the passion of underwater. I was Jacques Cousteau was a great influence to me as a young kid, and I thought his Calypso adventures were incredible. When I ended up, doing work as a diving instructor, I used a lot of my marine biology knowledge in sort of educating people about the marine life that we were diving with.
See, this is perfect. You were made for Club Med, right?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, the stars aligned at an early time, I think.
So I mentioned Jean-Paul Morales, who probably told me about you, and I see that he was your scuba chief that first season.
Yes, he was the man who welcomed me when I arrived. I arrived village, so it wasn't a big arrival on a charter or anything like that. I arrived fairly discreetly. He welcomed me, and I had my scuba bag and my clothes and the other, and he brought me up to the reception desk, and I was immediately greeted by a beautiful blue-eyed girl, and her name was Party Hats.
Wait, excuse me. Wait, this was her nickname.
This was her nickname. This was her Club Med name. I
Say
don't remember her
say
real name now.
say again. Say again.
Party Hats.
Okay, that I've never heard that one, and that's so I love
Well,
hearing a
Party Hats
nickname.
refers to. Well, I'll let you figure that out.
I
Think of a
okay,
pair
yeah,
of coconuts hanging from a tree.
yeah. Well, yeah, you're in Turks in '89, which is as good as it gets. Which brings me to my next question. Like me, did you not know that Turks was like a very big singles village? Because I didn't
I
know. Did you know?
No, I had no idea. I had no idea what I was getting into. I didn't really have a concept of what Club Med was all about. I just thought I was going to be a diving instructor in a resort, and I was going to be put up and fed. So I had no idea about, well, in the interviews, they talked about doing shows and other stuff like that, but I really, really didn't have a concept. So, no, I had no idea what I was getting into, and it was full baptism of fire.
So what do you remember about that first week? Do you remember a lot? Is it vivid
Yeah,
memory?
so Jean Paul welcomed me. Of course, I'm arriving mid-season. I'm white as white can be. Everyone is black tan from already 3 months into a season. I show up at the scuba shack the next morning in my speedo, which is very European, very white, slightly out of shape. So I had a little bit of a paunch going on, and ready to go. But I stuck out like a sore thumb straight away. And within 24 hours, Jean Paul already had a nickname for me because of the way I was presented, sort of very white, slightly tubby, out of shape. And he said, "You know what you look like? You look like Winnie l'ourson." Winnie l'ourson. What l'ourson? And of course, that is French for Winnie the Pooh, as in Winnie the small bear or small boar. And so he said, "You look like Winnie l'ourson." And I said, "Well, okay." And then, of course, a couple of the other guys heard me call that, and the name was stuck. And before I knew it, I got a name tag, and it said Winnie on it.
Okay, I was hoping you earned this nickname because you like to eat a lot of honey at breakfast, but that was not the case, right?
Not really, but it turns out that I became very reputably known for giving hugs
Oh, okay.
to all manner of sorts, in particular the GMs. So I was a big hugger in Club Med. So Winnie went with Winnie the Pooh, who liked to give hugs to everyone.
And eat honey. basically, huh?
and eat honey. Well, I did years later. Well, we'll get to this. I eventually became chief of scuba. At the time, there was a movie that came out with Tom Cruise, and it had a slogan in it called "Show me the money."
Yeah.
Remember that movie?
Oh,
Show
yeah.
me the money.
Yeah. Jerry
So
Maguire.
I came out with a T-shirt for the scuba team called "Show Me the Honey,"
Nice.
and of course that opened all kinds of doors for all kinds of situations.
Would you think when was your first encounter with JoJo below the surface or on the surface? Do you remember?
Geez, I don't know. I can't remember. I think
We,
he rocked up by the boat and he just rubbed himself up and down the anchor chain like he always loved to. And I mean, I had so many encounters with JoJo because I did 2 seasons in Turks. My first season was there, and that was just epic. And probably 1,000 stories about JoJo, but he was attracted to some people and not attracted to others. He'd annoy people he didn't like, and he would cuddle people he did like. There was something in your chemistry or behavior that either he liked or didn't like. And if he didn't like you, he'd mess with you. If he
yeah.
liked you, he'd just, jump up and down around you joyfully.
What else can you tell me about your first season before
Okay, well,
we move on to St.
going back
Lucia?
to the first week. So, you know, there was Kenton Smith was the chief of sports, and he said, "Right, Winnie, we need to get you in the shows, and we need to get you on stage." So my second night there, I was recruited to join one of the numbers for the lip sync contest, and it was Crocodile Rock with Elton John and Kiki D, and that was Hammer and Julie who were playing Elton John and Kiki D, and I was one of the crocodiles. So we had these crocodile suits, these green felt, hot, custom made. There were 4 or 5 of us dressed up in crocodile suits, and our job was to be crocodiles around this this lip sync number. And of course, the crocodiles got up to all kinds of mischief on stage, and we messed with those guys. So it was my first encounter with Hammer and Julie, who I did many seasons with afterwards, and that was my baptism of my first number on stage, and I've never forgotten that.
Stayed with you, huh?
Yeah. I tried to find some photos, but I couldn't find any photos. So there was that. Another thing I remember too is when I was, briefed about coming into Club Med, I was told about the dress codes, and we had, these red and white themes and everything. And there was also Elegant Night, which was Friday night, always Friday night back in those days. And so I thought Elegant Night, and elegant in Europe means, black tie, that's super elegant. So I actually packed a full-on black tie, bow tie, cummerbund, suspenders, black shiny leather shoes, ensemble for Elegant Night. It turned out that we had our geo meeting, the general geo meeting. So I arrived like on a Tuesday, and now I'd been on stage. I'd done a couple dives. It was Friday night, first geo meeting, and it was just before 7 o'clock and happy hour time at the bar. So I put on this full on tuxedo. I'm looking pretty sharp, I think. And I show up in this geo meeting. And of course, I'm the only one wearing a black tie tuxedo. And I'm, everyone's, there's some catcalls going on. The girls are going on, the boys and, everyone's sort of in maybe a tie, maybe a jacket. The girls always look very good, but it was semi-casual. It wasn't like full on Monty black tie. And the chief of village, he was a French chief of village, and to this day, I still can't remember his name. We've been trying to remember it, but he said, "Well, I'd like to welcome our newly arrived Geo in the village, Winnie." And I got a standing ovation from 80 Geos for my black tie number.
And then let me guess what happened. So you're in your tuxedo, it's sweltering hot outside, and the chief of village decides to play La Bonne Franquette for like 20 minutes, right?
Yeah, something like that.
I'm gonna mention some names and you tell me what season this is, okay, Winnie?
Yeah, go for
Because
it.
this sounds like quite the season that you had. Okay, so you got John Paul Morales as scuba chief. Your chief of village is Pierre Garnier. Hansel Moss, the great Hansel Moss, is your chief of sports. Angie Boucher was there. Hammer was there. Jenner was there. Red was there. Cheese, Sparrow. Dave the Wave, Dano, Scott Richmond. What season am I talking about?
St. Lucia, 1990, my second season.
That's quite the amount of talent you have there, my friend.
I have to say, if there's 2 or 3 seasons that you could pick out as your dream season, this was one of them. I think I had two, and this was an epic season. I mean, what a rock star cast we had. Hammer at the time was Golf Geo, Angie was Aerobics Geo. They became Epic Chiefs of Villages, of course. Hansel was there leading the charge. And yes, we had all these other Canucks and Canadians who were, seasoned geos and knew all their stuff, and they had great ideas to build these massive sets by the pool and do these shows by the pool, and we would build things in our spare time. So yeah, we had just a brilliant team, and of course we had a scuba team, which was rock and roll scuba team as well. And we Sean Lunt was the previous scuba chief, and then Jean Paul. And Jean Paul basically brought half his scuba team from Turks to St. Lucia. So we were a tight posse on the scuba side of things. Those in the days too, when you finished your season, you could say which was your 1, 2, or 3 pick for the next season, and if you did a good season, you would get your number one pick. So do you remember that?
Oh yeah, I do. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. So I heard Jean Paul was going and everyone else was going there, and so I said St. Lucia. Yeah, absolutely. So that was easy, and it turned out to be what a season. I mean, wow, that
Can I
was
ask you,
my
can I ask you a quick
yeah.
question?
Yeah.
Dave the Wave. What did he do?
He was land sports, I think.
Do you know why he was called that? Because I've heard this nickname over the years, but I don't know why he was called that. Do
You
you know?
know, I don't remember actually. I did
Okay.
that one season with him.
Okay. And
Um,
Dano was scuba, right?
Dana was good. So Dana was in Turks with me in the first season. We came up together. We were roommates in
Okay.
St. Lucia. And great story about St. Lucia. Remember all the little geo houses that we had by the golf course? So they all had names, and I was in one called Kos, and we called it the House of Kos. And we set up a daily 5 o'clock happy hour, just before the end of at the end of the day, before we got going at 7 o'clock. We had a ring toss set up there. We had the Heineken factory around the corner, so we always had a big igloo cooler full of beer and rum. I still have that igloo cooler, by the way. It's traveled the world with me ever since. And we used to gather at the House of Koss for barbecues, ring toss. Red was also there that season as well. We had these gatherings there, which were sort of the central focal point of when we had downtime. That few times when we had downtime in between bits and pieces throughout the day. So the House of Koss was a great memory for me. And Dana was my roommate in the House of Koss.
And how was Hansel Moss as chief of sport?
He was just brilliant. He was kicking everyone's butt all over the place. His leadership and his constant smile and his, regular jab in the right arm to say, "Are you okay with everything?" He was just epic. And I did another season with him later on. That was in Eleuthera. He was also chief of sports there, but he was. I mean, I think it was his leadership and his attitude and his way of doing things was one of the key elements that made that season a dream season. The kind of season where all the guests would get on the bus at the end of the holiday and people would be crying with joy and happiness and emotion. We all were, because they just had the most epic week of their life.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I'd like to jump to your season in Cancun. So they send you back to a singles village because your scuba chief was my scuba chief my first season, Lisa Henson.
Yeah.
So you arrive in Cancun the winter of 1990, 1991, correct?
Yeah. So that was my third season after St. Lucia. Again, quite a few of the gang came from, I think it was about 20, 25 of the team came from St. Lucia to Cancun. So Hammer, Jenner, Cheese, all those guys, Red, we carried on working together. And yeah, Lisa was there as chief of scuba.
Since she was my first chief and I was first season, so she was my first boss. I remember, like, she was tough but fair. Like, you didn't mess with Lisa Henson, put it that way, right? Like
Yeah,
she
absolutely.
really captained the ship. But I remember when she left, and she wasn't like a a touchy feely huggy type person. She liked you, she liked you. So, but when she went to leave, I was at her departure, and all of a sudden I start choking up. I'm like, oh my god, don't cry, Greg, don't cry. What are you doing? And I didn't know why I was choking up either. Okay, maybe it's because she was my first boss and she was leaving, and I liked her, but she was fine. She was like, because she had
She
been
was
2 seasons, she was, to her, it was just another departure, going to another village. But I was like almost a blubbering mess, and I had to catch myself from
yeah.
crying
Well,
at her
she
departure.
ran with she ran the team with a tight ship, as you said, and a firm rule of hand. I think because in those days the majority of the scuba instructors were all guys. There weren't too many female scuba instructors. So she had all these virile, A-type personality, good looking. Of course, all the scuba demons was the best looking guys in the village, of course, around her. So she had to rule with a firm hand because otherwise she would have been overrun, and no one could overrun Lisa. So she was brilliant.
Yeah. So yeah, Lisa, if you're listening to this, I miss you, and I almost cried at your departure, but you never knew it till now. Okay. Uh,
I love you,
also,
Lisa, too. I miss you too.
also, you worked with someone that was on this show, Mr. Grant Simmons, who was
Yes.
sailing chief, right? And also Scotty DePalma was there, I believe.
Yeah, De Palma. I did several seasons with him. I think he was also in Turks and possibly St. Lucia beforehand. He jumped from windsurfing to circus geo to land sports, and he was just the MacGyver of sports, really. Tall, good-looking fella, great guy, epic character too. So he was there as well. Gosh,
Now, well, was were you and Grant Simmons the only like UK geos there, or were there
so
more?
there were only two other geos that I came across who were from the UK that worked in the Caribbean, and that Grant was one, and the other one was a guy who was called Roast Beef. Obviously,
Okay.
the French called him Roast Beef, and that
Okay,
was a
wait.
guy called.
Okay,
Do you
wait,
remember
because
him?
no, but I have to get to this nickname because another guest mentioned roast beef and he didn't know how he got the nickname. So do you know how he got the nickname roast
Well,
beef?
yeah. So
Oh,
Roast Beef was his
thank God.
real name was Dominic Green,
Ah,
and he
okay.
was a water ski geo, brilliant water ski geo. And the French call like we call the French frogs, right? And the
Yes.
French call the English roast beef because we eat roast beef. So it's a
Oh,
common French nickname for English people.
okay, okay. I'm so glad it's not what I was thinking. Okay, okay. I no, I
I don't
didn't
know
know.
what you're thinking, Greg.
I did. I'm not going to say on air, but okay. But thank you. No, that's you cleared up the mystery because this has come up
So
a few times on my first
yeah.
season. Okay.
So he'd been around for a few seasons. So those are the only other two English origin geos that I came across. Because being a European geo recruited out of Europe, I was very lucky. All my seasons were in the Caribbean because of my scuba job. I never did a season in Europe. So most of any English geos would have probably been in Europe. So there were only a couple of us that made it out that far, and I was pretty lucky. Of course, all the Americans love the English accent too, so that was very helpful as well.
All right, Whitney. And after this amazing season in Cancun, you head back to St. Lucia, winter 92-93, with a very special friend of mine named Cowboy. So, what were your first impressions of Cowboy? Was he as crazy then as when I met him in 94?
Oh man, cowboy, cowboy, cowboy! What an epic character! Again, Dano was chief of scuba. Now he was chief of scuba that season. He'd been promoted. That was his first season scuba chief. We also had on the team Hollywood.
Oh, yes.
Um,
Yes, that was that season Cowboy talked about, right?
Yeah, so Hollywood was there. We had Terry, who's a French guy, gorgeous, fit, strong French chap. We also had Gary Kulisak, who was spoke captain slash diving instructor, an epic diver, slightly older than all of us. I don't know whether you've heard of Gary. He did quite a few seasons. And then we had another scuba instructor called Nick, who was also English, actually. That was, yeah, one other English guy showed up. And so, yeah, Cowboy was part of that epic crew, and that was really a fantastic scuba team. We had such a popular scuba program. I don't think there was ever an extra space on the boat all season long, both boats. We had two dive boats then, and we were very, very busy program. But Cowboy was just this enormous character right off the bat with this southern accent, drawl. I think he was from New York, but he sounded like he was from South Carolina.
Yeah.
And perennially with a cocktail in hand whenever we weren't diving, which was either a beer or rum or something, and just full of tales and stories. He would show up at the House of Koss at 5 o'clock every day and play some ring toss, and just he was just a storyteller. He had a yarn, a tale about everything, endless, and a joke. He was a good joke teller as well. He just one of those guys who can tell jokes really, really well. I'd cross the line of where we're allowed to cross the line if I embellish too many stories about Cowboy.
No,
because
just appropriate stories of Cowboy.
Yeah. No, yeah, well, exactly. There's not many appropriate stories I've got about Cowboy.
Which he would love to, he would get a kick out of hearing that because
I'm struggling.
Yeah, well, no, that's fine. No, you basically you liked him, right? Okay.
Yeah, he was.
Okay.
I mean, I loved Cowboy. I mean, we all loved Cowboy. He was just this larger than life individual.
I want to jump to Playa, unless you have a St. Lucia story, or can we jump to Playa now? Because
Playa. Yeah, Playa was off. Yeah.
So, did you like Playa as much as we all did? Did you like that season?
I mean, the funny thing about Playa is they didn't really have a scuba program. They didn't have a boat, but we did sort of dives right off the pier there, so it wasn't brilliant diving. And we did open water courses. We did the PADI courses, so we didn't have a great dive program. The village was just epic. And this village we had, what was it, Fernandez de la Rosa, Manu Fernandez de la Rosa was the chief of village. Hammer was now chief of animation.
That's right.
Christy was the chief of sports. I can't remember her last name now.
You had Jenner, Cheese, Red.
Yeah, Jenner, Cheese, Red. Two things from that season. We built this, and this was Red's idea. We built this massive full-size wrestling ring.
Oh, yes.
And we would do the WWF wrestling events. And Red was, of course, Hulk Hogan. And Jenner was Rowdy Roddy Piper or something like that. I think I was the referee because I was just a little guy, being tossed around the ring as well. But it was a full-on WWF show that we did by the pools. So there was that dance area by the disco.
Yeah.
There was a big area right there. And it was, a life-size, proper WWF ring. And they did some amazing stunts and stuff like that. We also had a thing which was generated where we had this chant called "In the Pool," and after every show there was the crazy signs, and there was, before we moved from there over to the bar and the disco, someone was always selected from the audience to go in the pool, and 600 people would be shouting "In the pool, in the pool." So it's full on peer pressure. And someone ended up in the pool every night. And that was something unique to that season.
Well, yeah, and you didn't have to check them for cell phones in 1993, right? So
no, there was none of that. I mean, you could, if they didn't want to go in, they were helped in. Believe me.
Yeah, yeah. Those people that objected, I remember we would ease them into the water. We wouldn't throw them because they objected so much. We would just slowly dip them in.
It was in the middle of nowhere, Playa. This 3-hour bus ride. We had the mariachi bands there, which were fantastic, and just these tequila nights too. I mean, there was always a tequila theme. Still love my tequila. Playa Blanca was just a beautiful season. It wasn't a brilliant diving season, but I remember someone showed up that season for their very first season. That was LP.
Oh yes, that's right. Because
LP was
he arrived with Atlantis, he told me. So you had Atlantis there, and he arrived on the bus with the Atlantis people.
and Hammer took him under his wing straight away and made him, I think he made him the animator.
Yes.
Or made him do animator
stuff. Yeah, he was. Yeah.
And I've got a photo somewhere of LP walking around the village with one of those leashes on a dog, but there isn't a dog, so it's like an invisible dog.
Yeah.
And he was the blind man as well. So he had an invisible dog as a blind man walking around the village. And he'd walk into the pool and walk into trees and walk into the ocean. Absolutely hilarious. But Hammer took him under his wing and just said, right, do this, do this, do this. And LP just did it. And he was brilliant. So that was LP's first season. And I think, yeah, there wasn't water ski there. We had kayaks and stuff like that. The other thing was the little kayak and the horseback ride down the beach to the Margarita bar. Remember
Yes.
that?
Oh yeah, it was
That
amazing,
was brilliant.
amazing
I
time.
mean, fortunately, those horses knew how to make their way back on their own because there's
Yeah,
no way you
when
could find your way
when
back on your own
when I
after.
when I was there in '97, we had the Margarita ride, the Margarita walk, and the Margarita kayak. So all
Yes,
three,
the
however,
kayaks.
yeah, however you wanted to go, you would go by those means.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had the occasional one, which was the nude kayak ride there and back.
Okay, Winnie, why do all your stories involve nude? We gotta find
Well,
somewhere you're fully dressed, Winnie. Come on, man. Give me
listen, all these
help
singles villages,
help
there
me
were a
out.
lot of
Help me out
there was
here.
a lot there was a lot of nudity in these singles
Okay.
villages.
What? I didn't see. Well, this was '93, so by my time, '97, it was almost gone. And
Yeah, to a lesser event, yeah.
that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. All right, let's move you on. Hopefully, from a nudity free season. Oops, nope. I see you're in Martinique the summer of '93. Damn it. Okay.
Yeah.
Any appropriate stories from Martinique?
Ugh,
If
Martinique,
not,
Martinique.
we can jump to Turks because I see you land right into another dreams a dream team scenario in Turks. But if you have an anecdote or interesting
Well, I mean,
fun fact about Martinique,
when I was in Playa, that was my promotion. I became chief of scuba there, and I just done a little stint in
did you,
between.
now
In
wait, Winnie, did
between,
you wait, Winnie, did you ask to be chief or they just promoted you?
they just promoted me,
Oh,
and
okay.
but I was keen. I was keen to. So, in fact, going back a bit after Saint Lucia, I did a stint in Eleuthera, and then went to Playa, and I was chief in Eleuthera. Then that was my first chief season. Then I went to Playa, and then so these were sort of small scuba programs to be broken in as a chief, and then I went back to Saint Lucia. So Playa Blanca. So after Playa Martinique, so I was chief in Martinique. Great diving there. Pastis. I remember a lot of pastis was drunk then. It wasn't rum, it was just Ricard. And we had someone Abdul, I think, was the chief of village. I'm a bit blurry about Martinique. I was I
Well, they
think
say,
was
well, you know what they say: if you could remember Martinique, you were never really there, right? Okay.
well, yeah.
So
um,
good on you.
yeah, I had a great room right by the scuba shack and opposite the big tower.
Yes,
Um,
to the
and
pool.
Yeah, and the nightclub down at the end on the beach was brilliant. It's just
Well, that's okay. We
um,
can jump to Turks because I'm more interested in
all
your
right.
season
Can we?
in Turks. Okay, so let's talk this Turks season, summer 97, because this is an important event that happened. You have Kevin Batt as chief of village. So is this where Hammer gets married? Is this season?
Yeah. So I'd actually taken a year out between seasons. I'd actually stopped after Martinique. I took a year off Club Med and I actually worked in the Cayman Islands for a little bit. And then I heard about Hammer's wedding. He contacted me and he said, come over for the wedding. You're only in the Cayman Islands. Come on over. All the gang were there, Red, of course, and so forth, Jenner. So I actually came in, it was April for their wedding, and I was snorkeling with Red. So we were the Speedo boys on the snorkeling and picnic team. So you can imagine Red leading the picnics and doing all the snorkeling. And those were, epic alcoholic
Okay.
adventures. And after 2 weeks, I was supposed to leave, and then Hammer said, "Look, we've got a new season starting. We've got a scuba position opening up. You want to stay?" And I didn't have to think twice really, so I ended up staying, and that was I would say probably dream team number two or dream season number two with Kevin and Hammer leading the charge. Hansel was there as photographer.
Well, he came. Yeah, he came to shoot the wedding of Hammer. And
Yeah.
you also worked with a friend of mine who I did my chief of sports stage with, Flower, who Flower,
Yeah.
Olivier Sanchez, who hopefully he's still chief of village in Cancun by the time this airs. But yeah, I know he's, in the month of February, he's still the chief of village
Yeah, he is. So he was chief of scuba. So yeah, I did a great season with Flower. He was a funny fellow. I stay in touch with Flower too, and he's still kicking around in the club. It's incredible. So yeah, he was still in his early chief of scuba days. Then I have, and Kevin Batt, he got a small black pig, which became a geo and part of the team as well. But I have one epic story and memory
okay,
from this season.
but let's be careful now, okay, Winnie. So avoid all things of nudity and
No, this is
names.
this
Okay,
is this
okay,
is
okay.
properly
Oh,
above board. Properly
oh,
above board.
okay. All right, you got one.
So,
All right, let's hear it.
and unusually, it's an above board story about Red. Red had for many years this amazing long, flowing red hair. Yeah,
Well, yes. Can I can
and
I can I just say yes? That's what I always heard, but when I met him, he wasn't that way, so I was confused. Okay, go on. Sorry.
yeah, no. So up until '97, in his years that I worked with him, and I did quite a few seasons with him, he always had this long red hair, which made him the Hulk Hogan and WWF and all these other things. And so it was 10 minutes to 7. It was time to go to the bar, and it was Liars Club. The Liars Club game that
Yes.
the little bar games that we played. And Red and I we had rooms right next to each other. We just had a little happy hour. We were primed to go to Liars Club at 7 o'clock. And at 10 to 7, he said to Winnie, 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 I need you to cut my hair. I said, what do you mean, cut my hair? And he brings out this electric razor. He said, I want you to shave all my hair off, right?
Oh, oh
All of it.
boy.
And
Yikes.
I had 10 minutes to do this.
Wait,
And I'm like,
did you ask him why?
I I think I did, but there just wasn't time to think about it because we were in a rush.
Okay.
I said, "Are you sure? Are
Oh my
you?
God.
I mean, come on. This is like Hercules. You're gonna lose all your strength."
Yes.
So he said, "No, no, no, do it." So I'd never operated one of these things, so I didn't really know how to use an electric sort of shaver or a hair razor or whatever like that. So he gave me this thing, and I just went and attacked him with this thing. And I didn't do a very good job because at some point I actually cut him, so he had a couple, you know, slashes where there was blood bleeding. I didn't get all the hair either. There was the odd tuft still poking out. When I was done with him, he looked like Frankenstein. He was bleeding from the skull. He had tufts of hair. We had no more time. He said, "Screw it, we got to go." So we show up at the bar, and we go to Lions Club, and there he is, bleeding from the head and looking like what the hell happened? And since that day, he never grew his hair back. He always kept it completely shaved. So I was the guy who shaved Red's hair, and he never grew it back again. So and that's my
Okay. Wait. Hold up a sec.
contribution to
This
Red's
is
Club Med career.
this is so strange because I used to have long blonde hair like Red, and there is that moment where when you tell people you're going to cut it, they're like, no, no, no. But when I decided to do mine, I never would occur to give razors to a guy named Winnie to do it. Like this is insane. Like what was okay? I'm gonna have to ask him what he was thinking because
We'd have to go back and ask him what was he
and
thinking.
yeah,
We just had an hour worth of cocktails
well
in my
maybe
room where I had the
okay.
blender going and we had
Okay.
margaritas going, so we were
All
feeling
right.
fine.
Well, maybe you just answered my question. Yeah, because I was sober when I cut mine, but I didn't give razors to a guy named Winnie. Some
Yeah,
hairdresser took scissors and made it
shouldn't
really
do
nice,
that.
really nice. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So that's part of history right there, people. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So it's my claim. I think when I look back at it now, I think Red and I did. I think Red was in more seasons than any other GO that I worked with. I think out of my 11 or 12 seasons, he was there for 70% of them. So he was always around and one of my best pals. Such an epic dude.
Speaking of epic, looks like you go to another epic season. So you go to Cancun from Turks, and here you have Kevin Batt, Hammer, CDV Promotion, and Oreo Stern. All three of these guys in one
Oh,
place.
yeah, absolutely.
Yikes.
So, chief of scuba there. So, having come back into the club, having been a year out, and sort of being assistant scuba under Flower, Kevin said, I'm going to Cancun next. Come to Cancun and be my chief of scuba there. So I said, yeah, absolutely. And, hammer there. And then, of course, Oreo had a room right next to me down by the pool when there were geo rooms down by the pool, not by the little shacks up by the scuba shack, but we had some awesome geo rooms right by the beach there. They're now GM rooms. And Oreo and I were sharing one of these complexes together. So Oreo showed up, and yeah, Hammer just starting to be promoted to chief of village. So again, Jenna there making his palm tree hats. He used to get these palm trees. He learned that in St. Lucia from one of the locals. He used to get these palm fronds and make these fantastic hats out of them. And he'd sit on the corner 2 times a week by the bar with a bunch of palm fronds and make hats for everyone. And another single season, another scuba season. I mean, most of the scuba programs, fortunately for me, were all in the big singles villages, with the exception of St. Lucia. So each of them were big party seasons. And Cancun, that was the days when we would have the buses on Thursday night that went to Daddy-O's. And we would take 3 packed buses of GMs and GOs out to Daddy-O's. I think this was Kevin Batt's initiative. And we had a VIP section in Daddy-O's, biggest nightclub in Cancun. And we would dominate that with, 300 or 400 people showing up every Thursday. Do you remember any of that?
Yeah, when I was there in Cancun, they were still doing that in
Yeah.
2004. Yeah, yeah.
So that was epic. And we would take over that club and then roll on out the rest of the night. And that was almost difficult Friday morning because that was a long, long night, Thursday night. And then we had to be ready for a big night Friday night because that was a finale. Everyone was leaving Friday night as well. And again, we would do these shows in the disco, the late night shows, the cabaret shows, and of course we had the male striptease show as well. We had to, do you remember the Chippendale? Yeah, we had the Chippendale numbers, which were extremely risque and close to nudity, but not full nudity, but damn close. And that was very popular evening with the ladies. And they had, I remember they had this tequila shot run, which went from the main bar to the disco. And as you walked from one to the other, there was like 5 tables where everyone needed to do a shot at each table as you arrived to the disco. It was only 50 meters.
There must have been a lot of shot dumping there by table four. Okay.
Because it wasn't, when they were giving the tequila away, it wasn't actually the most quality tequila, was it? It was that white whatever. Yeah. But it did the job. By the time everyone hit the nightclub, they were absolutely lubricated and the club was going off. So Cancun, I mean, that was my second time there. And other great memories from there were the scuba trips out to Cozumel and the cenotes, the diving that we had. So once every couple of weeks, each of us scuba geos got to take a trip out to Cozumel for the day or to the cenotes, and epic diving there too. So I had also an amazing marine life experience there in Cancun that season. It was Christmas Day, and I just taught a family of 6 to do the Club Med scuba course. They'd done it over the 4 stays, and Christmas Day was the final day where they could do their first dive. And we went out for a dive, and we got surrounded by a school of dolphins. I mean, a big school of dolphins. And that's very rare underwater with scuba gear on, making a lot of noise. And they surrounded us, and there was this mother and calf that broke off from the pack and came within 2 meters of us and swam with us for about 5 minutes and then broke off. You could hear them singing underwater, the dolphin song and sound. And it was, mate, it was spiritual. It was epic, emotional. And we came out after the dive, and I said to this family, and it was their first ever dive, and it was a grandmother, 2 parents, and grandkids. I mean, 3 generations. And I said, do you have any idea how rare that experience is? You will never experience that again on any dive you've ever done. And it was only our group in the water that encountered them. There were other groups there, but they didn't see the dolphins. And it was the story of the week in the club. And what a Christmas Day present. Wow.
Well,
Uh,
Christmas miracle indeed.
Christmas Miracle, and it was, I mean, wow, beautiful. Isla Mujeres, I remember quite well, was good fun. I mean, every element with Cancun was just hilarious fun. There was the tequila boat ride as well. There was the happy hour tequila boat ride that went through the lagoon from the pool. Remember that?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again.
All right. Well,
um,
I do want to move on from
yeah, okay,
Cancun
go ahead.
because
Yeah.
you like Mexico so much. You go to Sonora
Mm,
Bay, summer of
yeah.
1998, which happens to be Hammer's first season as chief of village, correct?
Yeah, that's right. We all went from Cancun. So Hammer said, right, come with me to Sonora, be my chief of scuba there. Big scuba program, the seals and everything. And again, Jenner, Hammer,
Red.
Scott, De Palma, Red, Boone. Now Boone was beginning to show up, I think, in these 97, 96,
I think
97.
that was Boone's first season, I believe, because I know Sonora
Might have
Bay
been his first
was,
season. Yeah.
yeah,
So,
with Hammer.
another epic dude who joined the club and did quite a few good seasons. So he showed up and he was water ski. LP was there, I believe. Can't remember who chief of animation was now. And chief of scuba was Eric. Chief of sports was Eric
Turner.
Howell,
Oh,
Eric
Turner.
Turner. Yeah, Eric Turner. So that was his first season of chief of sports, and that's where he met his lovely wife Erica, who they're still married with, I think, 4 or 5 kids now. Amazing. She was a boutique geo, local Mexican geo, and they met that season and they got married pretty soon after, I think. So there's one of those beautiful Club Med love stories. And then it's just a beautiful village. The diving was epic with the seals out at Seal Island. That was a special experience, another beautiful marine life experience. And just the whole village was just brilliant. The stage was great. And Hammer's season again, he just put together an awesome team, and it was another one of those seasons where people would be getting on the bus after their week and they would just be tearful of what an emotional, brilliant week they'd had with everyone. We had a, a, a real sense of magic was created by that team for the GMs.
Now, let's get into the one village where we almost met. Okay, because in summer of '99, you're in Columbus Isle, one of my favorite
Yeah.
places in the world. But I arrived only around October of '99, so this was actually the one time where we might have crossed. But when I had got there, John Paul was already the scuba chief, so I guess he replaced you as outgoing
Yeah.
scuba chief, correct?
Yeah. I did a year in Columbus. So after Snore, I did a year chief scuba in Columbus. Yeah, John Paul came and replaced me, and then I did another season in St. Lucia after that. So I think we probably missed each other by weeks, Greg. And I never forget sitting in that scuba office, looking down the dock and seeing the Bat Ray and
Oh, that's right.
the two Ray boats. And
Yep.
I remember sitting there at the time and looking down at my view from the office and said, I will never have a more epic office than this with this view. And it's true. I've never had a better office than that.
You're probably thinking, I'm never going to be able to remove that collapsible dock for a hurricane ever again, either.
It was such a clever idea.
Yeah,
Uh,
about time, right? Someone figured out, you know what? These things are always getting destroyed by hurricanes. Why don't we make it collapsible and
yeah,
we'll
we'd
walk
have
the
some bad
planks.
weather come in. We'd
Yeah, and
have to pull them all up and everything.
you had to put
Super.
them you had to put the planks behind the sea center. So I can't count how
That's
many
right.
times I did that in my two and a half years in Columbus.
Yeah, we had to shift those things quite a few times when the weather came in. But I mean, talk about epic. I mean, Turks and Columbus, probably the top two scuba
Well, sure, for diving,
destinations
right?
for actual diving. Yeah, I mean, St. Lucia was epic too, but I
Did
mean,
you
these two they were epic,
did you
epic,
see a
epic.
lot of hammerheads when you were diving in Columbus?
Did yeah, did especially when we did some personal dives with the instructors, and then that's when you saw schools of hammerhead coming through. But they would pop up from that depth as well. But I mean, it was 50-meter viz there,
Was
and
Telephone Pole one of the dive sites there?
yeah,
Oh,
absolutely,
okay,
yeah. I
okay.
mean, there must have been 50 dive sites there. You could come there for 3 weeks and dive every day and not repeat a dive site.
Yeah, and I heard like because I did Columbus so many times that John Paul was the reason there's iguanas on Columbus Isle because there weren't. He would go to I can't remember the island, just it wasn't that far away, and he would grab some and bring them there. And I remember one time he told me he went into Coburn Town because he wanted a chicken, right? Because I think he grew up on a farm. He loved animals, and he walked up to a lady because he saw a chicken in her yard. He says, "Can I have that chicken?" And she laughed at him like, "If you can catch it, it's yours." Thinking, who is this guy? And he quickly like snapped it up like Rocky did at the end of when Rocky finally could catch the chicken, and he walked away and he left, and she's like, "Huh?" So so yeah, there were chicken and roosters around the sea center when I was
Oh
there.
yeah,
So I don't know if you
absolutely.
recall any
Yeah,
of the
no, absolutely. There were chickens and iguanas all over the place,
yeah.
and when John Paul was there, when we switched around, there was this chicken with five little chicks following it
Yes, yeah,
would
he
follow
would
him around.
yeah, and he would incubate. He had an incubator. He made his own incubator.
He had these chickens following him around everywhere.
Yeah,
They were like, it was their dad. It was hilarious.
they imprinted.
I imagine they're still there, or at least the descendants of them are.
Yes, right.
Um, but yeah, that was his little touch for Columbus as well.
Yeah,
He had chickens everywhere. He had chickens in Turks. He had chickens in Saint Lucia. He
that's right. And
speed. By the way, Jean Paul was, of course, we all know him as the Speedo King, with the smallest speedo
yeah,
possible.
but he had the
Um,
body to pull it off. He had
he did,
those
he
like
did, he did.
blue eyes, and after Cowboy, to me, he's one of the most hilarious, eccentric guys there is because he always made me laugh, even on stage when we are supposed to be serious. He just knew when to zero in on me and make me crack up just with a look. So I could never keep a straight face. Then got yelled at by the choreographer or whoever.
He did some great stuff on stage.
Yeah,
Um, uh,
his what's it? The slow motion one to Chariots of Fire. I think it's
yeah.
called. Oh my God, I would love
Ah,
just to be. I would beg to be in this number just to see what he was going to do.
Freddie Mercury. He did Freddie Mercury
Oh
really well.
yeah,
And
perfectly.
what was that French one when they're I've forgotten the name of the song when I can even hear the
Oh,
song in my head.
what was the gist of the skit?
When they're washing, there's an old woman washing clothes, and there's this elegant French singer smoking a cigarette, and he's singing a
Oh
song to her.
yes. Oh yeah, you're
He's
right.
his wife or something like that.
Yeah.
And eventually, he gets completely abused by the woman, and Jean Paul was the woman. So he had this rag and a big wet bucket. He was soaking this guy. Eventually, he puts him in the bucket.
Yes.
Um, it's
Yeah.
a classic French number.
I can't remember the
And
name of the song, but yeah, I've seen.
and the other one when there's the three guys when there's another French number when
That's
there's
okay.
three. I know, and Jean
No,
Paul's
no
one.
problem.
He did.
Yeah.
He did. He did. He was very, very good on stage. He was very funny. Figaro. He did a
Yes.
few good numbers. My favorite number on stage, after all the years, was the Blues Brothers. I ended up doing the Blues Brothers in quite a few seasons, and I was Jake, and that was always an epic lip sync number, which is very popular. That was my number one number that I enjoyed doing.
Okay. And then from Columbus, Winnie, you go to St. Lucia one last time, 99 2000, because I believe this is your last season in Club Med, correct?
Yeah, that's right. So my last and final season was my third visit to St. Lucia, and after Columbus, and chief of scuba there one more time. A mixed bag of scuba teams, some new guys coming in, some old guys. By now, a lot of the guys that I'd worked with in the early years, they weren't around anymore. So there was a new wave of scuba faces coming in. And, at that point, someone had said to me, "Do you want to be chief of sports now?" And I thought, I'm not sure. And I was just quite happy being chief of scuba. That was my specialty. And I never got to that phase where it went to the next round as well. But St. Lucia was that third season was my final swan song and very familiar village. And again, just the diving program there was great. We ended up doing these scuba barbecues, which were fantastic there as well. So we had on Thursday evening, we did a scuba barbecue for all the people who were scuba diving. And that was a lot of fun. And that was just to cap off everything after the sports awards and stuff like that. We didn't have big construction. Again, it was a very busy season. I can't remember too many other
Well,
characters there from that season.
I have a question because you spent
Yeah,
Y2K there. Do you have any Y2K memories? Were people in a panic that were flying out the next day? Was there any people in the office digestion freaking out
yeah,
because
it was all a bit. It was all a bit of an anticlimax. That
yeah,
it was all like
exactly.
the end of the world's coming. We all had this big New Year's party, and everything was normal the next
Yeah,
day.
as
So
one of your countrymen might say, it was much ado about nothing. Correct?
absolutely. I mean, it was. I mean, it was. Everyone was like had no idea what might or might not happen, and then nothing happened at all, and it was like, okay, carry on, and welcome to the new millennium. And we had a big, obviously, a big New Year's celebration and a big party, and we used to do events there in the pool, and there were always the scuba team were in the pool because we had to contribute to some of the performance because someone would end up in the pool and stay in the pool. So we had to be there to get them and give them an octopus so that they could stay in the water. And so there were these, the pool in St. Lucia, the bar area, was an epic place to do shows and events and stuff like that. So there, I remember we did quite a few things. We did an Indiana Jones event there. We had the go-karts. Oh, the go-karts in St. Lucia. So I remember that season. I arrived and it was a scuba geo leaving, and they said I've got to give you pass on the key to the shack of the go karts because this goes from one scuba team to the next. So we had an extra key, so we would sneak down there at midnight and get in there, and we would all get all the go karts and tear around the track. And when I left, I duly passed on the key to another scuba geo. So the scuba team went up. We had some mischief with the go karts, but
Okay.
we set up a track around the pool as well as one kind of Formula One event or something like that. And we all had drivers. We had the main drivers at the time, so we all had the characters, and we we built this course around the pool and over the pool, and yeah, the go karts were great fun. That was brilliant. I think that was the only village that had go karts.
Okay, I have two last questions for you, Winnie.
Yeah.
We did mention a lot of names already, so I didn't want to leave anyone out, like that you enjoyed working with, because we did mention Cheese, Red, Jenner, Freddie. I mean, we mentioned a lot of people, so I didn't want to let you go unless there's someone else you wanted to mention. But we did mention a lot. I mean, a lot of people already. But did you want to shout out anyone else, or but because we did
I
mention
mean,
a lot?
so many legends, really, so many legends. I mean, I have to say, Hammer and Julie remain great friends, and they were. I did many seasons with them, and Hammer always had this great little expression when he saw me, because English and everything. He says, "Ah, there you are." He always used to say to me. I remember that, and we were always big fans of the late night burger bar by the disco or something. There was also that snack bar and the burgers, and we would often meet at the burger bar at 1 in the morning, and he would come up. Ah, there you are. So I know we would always meet at that point of the day, at some point for some final sustenance to a long, long, long day. So great memories from Hammer and of course all those Canucks, the Jenners, the Cheeses, the Sparrows, the Reds, and yeah, like I said, I think I did more seasons with Red than anyone. I mean, there's such a long list of names, but those are the ones that really stand out to me. Jean Paul, of course, and Flower. I'm blessed. I was very lucky to work with at an epic time in Club Med in the 90s, I think, with epic individuals who each and every one of them will have their own take and story from their time. And I think we all did quite a few seasons. So, you know, throughout the 90s, that was my run, 89 to 2000. And man, I don't know how we did it. And then you had 2 weeks off to basically sleep at home for 2 weeks and then start all over again. I mean, the Geo family, the Soul family. I hope to make the next reunion. I think there's one in 2024.
Yes.
Um, I did one of the reunions. I think it was the second one in Cancun. probably about 10 years ago now. But I'd love to get back out there. And this one goes out to Angie. So Angie and I have this epic backgammon competition between us. We used to play a lot of backgammon, and in the last reunion, we played just this incredibly long match, which ended up I won like 4 matches in a row. It was best of 5. She came all the way back, and then she won it on the final one. And there was a big crowd around us. So Angie, this one's to you. I look forward to hopefully the next reunion and seeing a lot of you other guys. And backgammon, you're on, baby.
Well, we cannot end it any better than that. So, Winnie, I would really want to thank you so much for sharing your story with us here today and taking the time to tell us. And man, it was so nice to meet the legend.
Well, thanks so much. And from one legend to another, Greg.
in
And
my own mind.
Well, absolutely. And hopefully you'll be at that reunion too, and we finally can sit at the bar and share a tequila and a beer together.
I am going to do my best to make it, sir.
Excellent. I love what you're doing with this, Greg. It's amazing because it allows us all to share our memories and think back on the time. So keep it up, mate, and massive kudos to you.
Will do, sir. Everyone, that was the famous Winnie from UK, now living in beautiful Mallorca, and we will see you all next week. Say bye, Winnie.
Cheerio, guys.